The placement of Saturn in the second house of a natal chart is one of the most significant indicators of a person's relationship with the material world, self-worth, and the concept of security. In astrology, the second house governs our personal finances, possessions, and the value systems we build for ourselves. When Saturn, the planet of restriction, discipline, and karma, resides here, life often feels like a long, slow climb toward stability. The weight of material security. For those born with Saturn in the second house, the fear of not having enough is often a foundational psychological driver. This isn't always rooted in actual poverty, rather, it is an internal sense of precariousness. You likely view financial independence not as a luxury, but as a heavy responsibility. In your early years, there may have been a tangible lack of resources, or perhaps a family environment where money was discussed with gravity and stress. This creates an adult who is exceptionally cautious with spending, often possessing a scarcity mindset that persists even after wealth is accumulated. However, Saturn is also the planet of mastery. While wealth may not come easily or quickly, the wealth you do build tends to be incredibly durable. You are the architect of your own fortune, preferring the slow and steady approach over get-rich-quick schemes. You likely possess a natural talent for budgeting, long-term investments, and the patience required to watch a seed grow into a forest over decades. The architecture of self-worth. Beyond the checkbook, the second house represents how we value ourselves. With Saturn here, your self-esteem is often tied directly to your productivity and your ability to provide for yourself. There is a tendency toward self-criticism. You might feel that you are only as good as your latest achievement or the balance in your savings account. The karmic lesson of this placement is to decouple your human value from your net worth. Saturn asks you to define value on your own terms rather than relying on societal status symbols. Throughout your life, you will likely face tests that force you to find internal stability when external resources are fluctuating. Once you realize that your worth is inherent and not earned through grueling labor, the restrictive squeeze of Saturn begins to ease, replaced by a profound sense of inner groundedness. The virtue of prudence. Saturn in the second house confers a distinct quality over quantity mindset. You aren't interested in flash, you want things that last. Whether it is a piece of furniture, a career path, or a relationship, you look for structural integrity. This makes you an excellent steward of resources. You are the person others turn to when they need a pragmatic plan to dig out of debt or a realistic assessment of a business venture. In your later years, specifically after your first Saturn return around age 29, this placement often yields its greatest rewards. Saturn is the Lord of time, and it rewards those who respect its lessons of discipline and delay. What began as a childhood fear of lack often matures into an elderhood of immense material and spiritual security. You become a pillar of reliability, having built a life on the bedrock of hard-won experience rather than the shifting sands of luck. Overcoming the shadow. The shadow side of this placement is a tendency toward stinginess, both with money and with your own talents. Because you fear loss, you might hold on to things, or ideas, too tightly, preventing the natural flow of energy. There is also a risk of becoming overly materialistic in an attempt to shield yourself from vulnerability. To thrive with Saturn in the second house, you must learn to trust the process of planned expansion. Recognize that while caution is a virtue, paralyzed fear is a cage. By treating your finances and your self-worth with the same disciplined, respectful attention you give to a long-term craft, you eventually transform Saturn's leaden weight into a golden fortress of lasting stability. When Saturn's discipline meets the specific energy of a zodiac sign in the second house, the how and why of your financial habits shift. Here is a brief look at how the signs color this placement. Aries, financial security is tied to independence. You may experience delays in starting your own business or feel frustrated by slow returns on impulsive investments. The lesson is learning patience in pursuit of the win. Taurus, since Saturn is in the sign of its own house, the focus on tangibility is doubled. You may be extremely frugal or possess a deep-seated fear of change. Security comes through owning land or physical assets. Gemini, wealth is built through communication, writing, or technical skills. You may feel blocked in expressing your ideas early on, but eventually, you become a master of a specialized niche. Cancer, money and emotions are deeply intertwined. You likely save to protect your family or nest. Your sense of self-worth is often tied to your domestic stability and the ability to nurture others. Leo, there is a conflict between the desire for luxury and the Saturnian need to save. You may feel self-conscious about your status, eventually learning that true royalty comes from internal character, not outward shine. Virgo, financial anxiety often manifests as perfectionism. You are incredibly meticulous with accounts, but you must be careful not to nickel and dime your own self-esteem by focusing on minor flaws. Libra, security often involves partnerships or legalities. You might experience financial delays through a spouse or business partner, teaching you to balance your needs with the needs of others. Scorpio, this is a heavy placement involving inheritance, taxes, or shared resources. You possess the grit to rebuild after a total financial loss, gaining power through psychological resilience. Sagittarius, your value system is based on truth and expansion, yet Saturn here restricts blind faith. You learn to back up your big visions with hard data and realistic logistics. Capricorn, Saturn is at home here. You are the CEO of your own life. Progress is slow, but your climb to the top is inevitable because your discipline is unmatched. Aquarius, your income may come from unconventional sources or social causes. You might feel like an outsider in traditional economic systems, finding security by investing in the future or the collective. Pisces, there can be confusion or a dissolving of boundaries regarding money. You may struggle with practical management early on, but you eventually find value in spiritual or creative wealth. When Saturn transits your second house, it marks a profound period of restructuring that lasts approximately 2.5 years. This is not merely a tough time for money, it is a systemic audit of your entire support system, both the physical resources in your bank account and the psychological resources within your soul. The financial sieve, from abundance to efficiency. The most immediate effect of Saturn entering the second house is a palpable tightening. If the previous transit through your first house was about redefining who you are, the second house transit is about determining what you actually have to work with. During this period, Saturn acts as a sieve. It forces you to distinguish between wants and needs. You may find that income sources you once took for granted become unstable, or unexpected expenses arise that demand a more disciplined approach to your budget. This is not a punishment from the universe, it is a corrective measure. Saturn is teaching you the art of financial stewardship. By the end of this transit, you won't just have a better grasp of your accounting, you will have developed the survival muscles necessary to manage wealth with wisdom rather than impulse. The crisis and reconstruction of self-worth. Perhaps more significant than the financial impact is the psychological shift. The second house governs our sense of value. When Saturn transits here, it often triggers a temporary deflation of the ego. You might look at your life and feel that you haven't achieved enough, or that your talents aren't as valuable as you once thought. This crisis of confidence serves a vital purpose. It strips away the false layers of self-esteem that were built on external praise or superficial status. Saturn asks the hard question, who are you when you have nothing to show for it? Asterisk the strip down. You may feel overlooked at work or undervalued in relationships. The foundation. This friction forces you to build a new, unshakable sense of worth that is rooted in your character, your integrity, and your actual skills, rather than your net worth. Building the Golden Fortress. While the beginning of the transit can feel cold and restrictive, the latter half is where the reconstruction begins. As you stop fighting the limitations and start working within them, you begin to build something incredibly durable. You might find yourself investing in long-term assets, not just property or stocks, but investing in yourself through specialized training or mastering a difficult craft. The second house also rules the voice and the throat. Under this transit, many people find that their words carry more weight. You stop speaking to hear yourself talk and start speaking because you have something of substance to contribute. The final harvest. As Saturn prepares to exit the second house, the squeeze usually relents, leaving behind a version of you that is far more grounded and self-reliant. You emerge with a lean, efficient financial life and a thick skin that allows you to weather future economic or personal storms with calm. The legacy of a Saturn second house transit is the realization that true security is an internal state. You have proven to yourself that you can survive on less, work harder than you thought, and still remain whole. You no longer fear the rainy day because you have spent the last 2 years building the roof.